And now you just flip it on their heads. You say, why is he such a big chicken? He won't talk to 60 Minutes.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Blue Sedition podcast. I'm Nate Brady alongside my co-host Mike Smith. What's going on, Mike?
Oh, nothing much, my friend. Just coming off the heels of a very exciting, very exciting vice presidential debate.
Is that what we're gonna say now? We're just gonna lie to everyone and say that was exciting? Was it exciting?
I think it's important to lie to people.
Okay.
No, I didn't think going in that it would be exciting. I was hopeful that we would get some pushback from the Dems and just kind of hammer it home, but I don't think that anybody would have expected a vice presidential debate to be exciting. It doesn't have that inflammatory feeling that you get from the presidential debate when obviously Trump is involved. So,
yeah. I mean, I think from both sides we were really interested to see how these guys performed. We don't really see them other than rallies and stump speeches. I don't think I've ever seen JD Vance debate. Maybe there's footage out there of him as a senator doing debates, but I've never seen anything from these two guys. So that's what I was really interested in, see how well they performed.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to get at what you were saying, before about seeing these guys under the lights with the mics in their face and getting actual debate with moderation somewhat. I wanted to see what these guys can do. There is a difference between getting up and doing your stump speech with nobody interrupting you and saying whatever you want with nobody fact checking you and cutting your mic off versus what we saw last night and obviously what we saw in the first debate between Harris and Trump.
Sure. You brought up, or we kind of touched on, it's important to lie to the American people. I think what we saw last night was lying from JD Vance in a much better style than Trump does. And I think that was one of if we could just jump right into like our key takeaways. I think one of the big things that jumped out on me, and is certainly worrisome to me, is how much better JD Vance is, how much more eloquent he is at saying the same nonsense that Trump is saying. The first thing I'm hearing is, here's the future of the Republican Party.
Yeah. I think I'm right there with you, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are as well, that the idea that I'm seeing a lot of the major publications putting out this morning and late last night was JD Vance has positioned himself as the next Trump, and he's a more focused, less erratic public speaker. And so you get the same, hatred of the deplorables that Trump brings to the table, but JD Vance is able to put that into politispeak better than Trump does. I mean, we say better than, but it's more of the mainstream political talking styles that we've seen in the past. Your McConnell's, your what was the name of the guy who was the House Speaker before?
Which one?
Ryan,
Paul Ryan?
Yeah, Paul Ryan, exactly.
Yeah,
those types who are able to eloquently prepare some statements that blow all the right dog whistles for their base and say things in a politically vanilla way while still having that same I'm going to put people in camps feel that you get.
Yeah. Well, the difference between Paul Ryan and JD Vance, and I'm not giving any credit to Paul Ryan because he's still a piece of shit, was that there was still at least a line that was already over the line we wouldn't cross, but there was a line that he wouldn't cross, and that's why he got kicked out of Trump's party.
Yeah, I do think the more that we see, as time unfortunately marches forward, we are seeing that the GOP is the party of Trump, and the future doesn't appear to be any different. When we see JD Vance as the heir apparent, let's say as an example here that we're in 2028 and let's say Trump lost 24, I'm very suspicious if we're seeing anybody besides Vance as the front runner of that primary ticket. And that means, of course, everything that comes with it, and that means more Trump types on the right and fewer Paul Ryan's, fewer.
I'm gonna push back a little bit on that. I think that if Trump loses this election, there has to be a really, really hard push from the establishment Republican that makes sure that these guys are just done with politics, because he'll have lost 8 years, to the Democrats, right?
Yeah.
And now you want JD Vance, who, by the way, even after this debate, we're going to talk about these polling numbers, is still unfavorable to the American people, including his own party, right?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I don't understand genetics. I don't understand, medical conditions that people undergo. I don't understand how aging affects our health system because I'm not a medical professional. But Trump seems to be immune to succumbing to those sorts of things. I don't hear about him having a heart attack. I don't hear about him, having any of these problems, a stroke or what have you. So I'm afraid we're going to be stuck with Trump, even if he is no longer running for president for a long time. He's going to be calling into Fox News and he's going to be, doing campaign rallies, I would imagine, for whoever the front runner of the GOP is moving forward. Even if he loses, I still think that he's the loudest voice in the party, and he's very likely to continue in a less front runner way, or a less face of the party way, and more as a, you bring me to your, you pay me millions of dollars to show up to your campaign rallies. I'll bring the, all of the crazy people who voted for me last time, and it'll make your rallies so much bigger.
In a way, I hope you're right, because I think that will really divide the Republican Party, and you'll have the hardcore Trumpets who are the Trump or bust type of people.
Yeah.
And that could ruin the Republicans for a long time.
Well, I've been hoping that for a long time. I mean, I bring her up a lot on this podcast. I talk about Sarah Palin, and I think that I had that feeling when McCain picked her. I was saying, oh, we finally get one of these Tea Party folks in on a ticket, and I'm hoping that this loss will just set them back so far that the Republicans will look inward.
Well,
do a little introspection,
sure,
and housekeeping.
But tell me who are the Tea Party Republicans that are still left? Right?
The Tea Party became the party of Trump. I just think it shifted. I think those crazy people became the Trump people. I think that there's probably a coalition of more than one front there, but it's all the same dog whistle nonsense over and over again. They, at first it was the birtherism about Obama, and now it's, Kamala, she was born with low IQ or whatever. And I think it's the same rhetoric, the same racism, I don't have a better word for it, that unites the crazies on that side. You get a little RFK Jr. in there, and you get the people who believe every conspiracy they've ever read, and they don't believe in the vaccines. And you've got this coalition of the absolute worst people that you would ever like to spend a lunch with.
Well, you caught me probably on my only optimistic hour of the day, but I think I think that if Trump loses, this all hinges on this election. I think if Trump loses this election, I think the fraction, the fissure in the Republican Party will be so great that it will be hard for them to rebound from this for a very, very long time. And
I hope you're right. I hope that we're obviously hoping for their loss, but in the case of their loss, we're hoping for that just, like you said, fissure. I really just want to split this party down the lines of the crazy people and the not crazy people. It would at least make the Dems have their talking points of the moderate Republican. At least I could draw the line of where that ends.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so now you're making me feel like I was a little too optimistic. I don't know. We'll see. But let's. We've
already seen. I do want to touch on this though.
Okay.
I think it's a good point. It's an interesting exercise to go through. We already have seen something of that flavor in the House of Representatives. The Republicans have been infighting for the last term or two at this point, basically since 22. And it's been chaotic, to say the least. They voted out their Speaker of the House and replaced him with, a Christian nationalist, for lack of a better explanation. And it's still been infighting the whole time. And I can't think of any actual bills that they have sent up the hill. But again, you're my fact checker. I'm sure that there have been. They just haven't been newsworthy.
Nothing that's helped the American people in any, I don't even want to say dramatic way, in any quantifiable
any capacity,
way. Yeah. Okay. So as I'm talking to you, I kind of got my left eye on the news. And of course, one thing I'm seeing is Vance's dominant debate performance shows why he's Trump's running mate, the New York Times. Of course.
Let me guess the actual newspaper.
Yeah.
I think I can get these.
You would have gotten it.
New York Times would have been my first pick.
Yeah. So first, before we dive into, we started with some takeaways and we kind of got off track a little bit, but it's all related. But in your mind, who won the debate last night?
I probably would say that Vance won the debate. I don't think that it was by much, but everything that I was hoping for, everything that I expressed in the last couple episodes of wanting to see, I didn't see enough of it. I didn't see Tim Walz just taking him to the mat. I didn't see him trying to catch him off with little snide little jokes or trying to get him, caught in any of those gotchas that we know that the Republicans fall into because they're terrible. But Walz started out slow. He was stumbling a bit at the outset, but then he kind of firmed up, and I think he did a pretty good job. But JD Vance just didn't seem shaken. He didn't seem like anything caught him off guard, and frankly, they did the same old song and dance. They pointed out, how terrible the world was under Trump, and how terrible it would be under a next Trump term, and they enumerated all those things, and it just doesn't stick. So I think the people who, I don't know who these people are, but people who are undecided, people who don't pay attention to politics very much, probably weren't swayed or did not watch the vice presidential debate. And so in that respect, I think you have to give it to Vance, because, no movement in the negative, or at all rather, is probably good enough for him.
To use the meme, I absolutely under no circumstances have to give it to the guy, right? Like,
Yeah.
Okay, so Vance won the debate, but what did he win? What did he win it with? A bunch of lies as usual. And let's start with, you mentioned that Walz didn't really get him in those gotchas, but he did. He got him in a few of them, right? So I think one of the ones was, he looked him directly in the eyes and said, "Did Donald Trump win, or did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?" And Vance responded with, I'm focused on the future." And Walz's quick-witted response was, "That is a damning non-answer."
Yeah, that was very clearly the highlight for the Democrats last night. That was the highlight of the debate. And if you follow that entire thing, Vance was pretty quick to respond to that as well. I don't think it was a good response, but he didn't get caught up in that, and he wasn't shaken by it. He kept pivoting, kept turning. But I think that's one of the biggest problems that we're seeing in recent elections, is that the facts don't actually matter. Like you were saying, New York Times, WAPO, USA Today, all of these news outlets are just going to run that Vance won the debate.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that's the headline of substance, right? And they're not really going to remark on the fact that Tim Walz called him out and said, point blank, did Donald Trump lose the election? And JD Vance didn't have an answer. I mean, 20 years ago, that is front page news. That's akin to binders full of women. It's a flub that should cost you major points.
Yeah, totally. And
nobody's going to run with it. None of the newspapers,
right.
none of the the major media is going to run with it. And so those undecided voters, whoever they are, aren't going to hear that Donald Trump and JD Vance are election deniers. They're going to hear that Vance won the election. And that's the optics that matter. The optics that reach these seldom non-voters, seldom slash non-voters, and then sway them accordingly.
I mean, especially if they didn't watch the debate last night. But there are some things that happened during the debate last night that I found reassuring for the Democrats. One, Tim Walz spoke so eloquently on healthcare quite a few times. He proved that he understands the process. He talked about what he got done for Minnesota. He explained very clearly things that Vance just wasn't prepared to answer. And Vance even said, my party, and this is a quote, my party must do a better job of regaining the American people's trust on this matter where they currently do not have confidence in us. I mean, that's, hello.
I thought that, I mean, you have it in front of you, so you're probably right, but I thought that quote was in particular response to abortion.
I mean, it was. I mean, so I'm counting reproductive rights in healthcare as well.
It is. I get that.
Yeah. There were a couple of times where it got back to Walz on healthcare, and he just did a fantastic job. I mean, he was very well prepared. Not only well prepared, but it's just obvious that he has experience in these issues.
Right.
And once again, we go back to, okay, your guy, your running mate wanted to repeal the ACA on day one, repeal and replace it with what? With where's the plan? And brought up concepts of a plan. Well, where's the plan?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, and he needed to do that. And we've been begging for the Democrats to do that for years now. They just need to hit them. They need to go out there and take this. You said you were going to come up with a plan in 2 weeks. It's now been a month. Where's the damn plan?
Right.
And just get loud and obnoxious about it, because again, you're not going to sway any voters. You're not going to sway Democrats or Republicans with this VP debate. What you're going to sway is the story, the narrative that the media outlets are going to run with. And so even if you call this a wash for Tim Walz, let's say it's a tie, which I think is being a bit generous, you're still not going to run those stories unless they get absolutely heated. You need to create a news story out of it. You hit him with it over the head. Like you said, 2 weeks, it's been a month. And he said this 2 years ago, 4 years ago. Where is it?
8 years ago.
Yeah, 8 years ago. Like, and just get really obnoxiously loud about it. Then it becomes a story. And I was hoping for more of that. I like the points he did make, but they're not going to sway somebody who isn't going to read to page 2 of that article. The headline will read Vance won or Vance tied or, Walz underperforms or whatever the headline is. They'll read the first paragraph. It'll say continued page 4, column D, whatever.
Right.
And they won't go there. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
And so those voters aren't going to see the nuance. They aren't going to see the points being made, or in the case of the Republicans, the points not being made. They don't have to make points. They just have to make sure that they don't look stupid during these debates. And then it becomes nothing happened at the debate. And then you move on, and it's the next news cycle.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think it's funny, we could talk about this a lot, but I think at the end of the day, like you're saying, this really didn't mean much. It really didn't.
It didn't mean much, and it was one of the few opportunities handed to either side to make a case for, the next Haitians eating your dogs, like to just try and make a news cycle that revolves around one or two key things from the debate. And as far as I can tell, CNN, Politico, Raw Story, all these, I'm not seeing anything percolate that ends up
they're
screaming at me.
Yeah, they're running with, the left is running with JD Vance, election denier stuff, and the right is running with Walz flubbed, saying that he was friends with a school shooter, which was obviously taken out of context, where he misspoke, and then also his misrepresentation of his time in China. And
She got wrong by a month and a half.
Yeah, I mean, so
Okay.
neither of those things, in my opinion, was shocking to anyone and really moved the needle. We saw some polls come through that actually let's bring up. I think you have a poll that you wanted to talk about. You said at
Yeah,
the
let's
top.
let's do it. Okay, so this one comes out of Politico specifically. They ran a number of polls post debate, and so obviously they have who won the debate,
Sure.
and of course it's directly down partisan lines,
Right.
obviously. So Democrats say 72% to 5 that Tim Walz won the debate, and Republicans say 71 to 4 that Vance won the debate. So I think outside of the party lines, well, inside the party lines, it doesn't tell us anything we didn't know.
Right.
It's tribalism, and we're voting for either blue or red, depending on what's your favorite color.
Right.
The others, the not, the independents, the green parties, the et ceteras, are really where I think we're going to see some interesting outcomes here, because the Politico article doesn't point this out, but I think that their actual data and the graphs that they're pointing up here actually do. So in the other column, who do you think won the vice presidential debate? Other, 34% said that Tim Walz won versus 25% that said JD Vance won. So I mean, right there you've a 9-point spread. Obviously, that leaves the elephant in the room of 41% did not watch.
Right. Right.
But still, even in independent splits, and I apologize, I don't know what those splits are. We know that this poll was of 902 people, but we don't know how many of them were other versus Democrats versus Republicans. I don't know what that actual makeup was,
Right.
but you have to imagine that this could be symbolic of the broader American picture of these are non-Democrats, non-Republicans. These are people who you have to assume are either independent, Green Party, et cetera, or just not, politically minded. And so that other column showing Tim Walz ahead, I think, is hopeful.
I think traditionally, historically, when you think about independence, and this is when the independent group in America was a lot smaller. We know that's grown significantly over the last several election cycles. Historically, I think it's always leaned Republican, and now that it's growing, I'm starting to see the opposite. Right?
Yeah, I think that you're getting a lot more people who are willing to, choose a political affiliation, we'll say, that is sort of the non-Democrat, non-Republicans. We're seeing more terms for that. I think that probably 20 years ago, I hadn't heard of the Green Party. Probably 15 years ago, I hadn't heard of libertarianism. So, I mean, there are more factions. Is that what I want to say?
Sure, factions works.
Of non primary partisanship parties that I think we should be paying a little more attention to at the very least.
So there was a record high in 2023 of United States adults that identified as independents. What percentage of Americans do you think identified as independents in 2023?
And this is people who are registered independent, or people who self-identify even if they're Democrats or Republicans?
It's the same. It's a let me make sure I have the exact.
Yeah, sure. Because I find it interesting because I know people on both sides of the aisle, but Republicans and Democrats, who are registered one way. They're registered Republican or Democrat, but they consider themselves, big air quotes, independents. They're free thinkers. They're not, swayed by the party politics or the partisan bickering. And then I argue with those people a lot.
All I can say is that this is a Gallup poll with 12,000 participants.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah,
it's more likely that these are people who self-identify as independent. So
yeah.
I'd say that number's got to be close to 25 or 30%.
43%.
No, 43%.
43% of U.S. adults identify as independents.
Goodness gracious. Now, again, I don't suspect that they that their registrations reflect that, but that's interesting to see, or to hear rather.
Yeah, and it's been dropping since, it looks like 2006 here, and down to 27% identify as Democrats, while 27% identify as Republicans. So really, really interesting.
That is just fascinating to me. You're telling me that nearly half of all voters, or American adults,
Right.
identify as non-Democrat or Republican, but rather independent.
Yeah.
And it's interesting.
And we can tie this to ideological identification.
Yes, I think so.
So, well, I mean, they actually asked that as a follow-up. 36% say that their political views are conservative. 36% say they're moderate, and 25% say they are liberal.
See, wow. Okay. Sorry, say that again. Conservative. What was the second one?
36% say they're conservative. 36% say they're moderate, which we would assume
moderate,
is centrist.
Yeah,
and 20
liberal.
Where a lot of those people can be Democratic voters, right? Like there's plenty of centrists that Biden, to me, is like that's who falls there. Right?
I would call him a conservative Democrat myself.
Yeah, but
and he has been for a long time.
Right. Right.
Well, that's very interesting though, because I think that again, I'm an optimist with a lot of cynicism, but I feel like that says that there's there actually is someone to court who isn't, down these partisan lines. And so I wonder if these polls show us something optimistic. So we've just been talking about who do you think won the debate. There's another one that says, regardless of whether you watched the debate, who do you think would be a better vice president? And so the options here were Tim Walz, JD Vance, and don't know. And again, those are strictly down partisan lines for Democrats and Republicans. 92 and 91, no one's surprised there. But then the others, these independents we're talking about, say Tim Walz, 44%, versus JD Vance's 36%, and the don't know 20%. This is falling more in line with what we're seeing about that. So I'm wondering if the Democrats are doing a good job of getting loud and courting these otherwise apolitical voters, and showing them who they are and how they are better suited for leadership roles.
Right. Okay.
I mean, 44% of these otherwise voters, the non-Republican, non-Democrat voters, saying Tim Walz is the better choice. That's an 8-point spread over Vance, and I got to say that has to play. That has to return in the votes. I would imagine
it has to. You really have to believe it does. I mean, we're only now, what are we? Almost a month away.
Basically, a month and 2 days. I mean,
from finding out. So what does it mean? What does it mean now? I don't think there's any more debates coming up. I think we're done.
Trump, we're on the campaign trail now.
Yeah,
that's it.
Trump backed out of. Did you hear about this story? Trump backed out of a 60 Minutes interview once he realized that there was going to be live fact checking involved. He said, "Nope, not going to do it," and that was scheduled to air on Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
I did read that. I found it interesting too, because it was a 60 Minutes interview, and they've been doing this interview specifically with the candidates for like the last 40 years. And they're like, this is the first time a president has backed out of it. And I'm like, I think that's a story in of itself. If I'm anybody in the Democrat camp, I'm begging all of the news media to run the story of Trump, chickens out. Like, I'm just trying to make that story hit the front page in a news cycle.
And so
especially if he holds through. That's the other problem with Trump, is that he'll say something and then do the opposite. So I think they're probably going to wait till Monday, because they said that they've recorded a special announcement instead of doing that of doing that interview, which will air Monday. And so I think that Trump still has time to, turn on his heels and come back and do the thing and complain about how unfair it is and all these other things that Trump loves to do. But if he does miss the interview, then I think next week's news cycle you have to get every Dem pundit on every news station you can and say, Why is Trump chickening out of these interviews? Why won't he speak to the media? Why won't he do all that same stuff that they were doing with Kamala? And now you just flip it on their heads. You say, why is he such a big chicken? He won't talk to 60 Minutes, who is the least partisan of all the news networks, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And you wonder, though, does that have any effect? I mean, I feel like we are in such hyper partisan times.
I completely agree. However, we just came out of a segment talking about these independent people and how big of a section of the voter base they could be if you can just energize them to go to the polls. So you need to get loud about Trump being the worst candidate and Harris being the best. And you need to get loud about how bad America as as a place to live would become under a second Trump term. You need to point out the Project 2025 stuff, and you need to make sure it gets into the ears of these people who may not vote because they don't see a difference, or who usually don't vote because blah, 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 and get them in line. Get them in line to vote at a polling place, not in line to party.
Oh boy.
I'm not whipping the vote. I'm just saying, get them in line to vote. Sorry.
That's a soundbite. Okay, so I think I don't really have much else to add on the VP debate. Do you have anything else there before we move on?
No, the thing I'll close with on the VP debate is that vice presidential debates never matter. As much as we want them to, they simply don't move the needle much. And I have to take away again from the Sarah Palin VP debates because she looked like an 8-year-old child debating an adult, and she couldn't say words correctly and her brain doesn't work, and it didn't move the needle. They came out of that the following couple of weeks and it pulled the same. So we want it to matter because it's so important to all Americans that we pick the right president and vice president. And at the end of the day, the vice president only needs to be able to fog a mirror in the case that the president has a massive coronary.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say my just to close on this as well, I think you're right. I think even Sarah Palin's, that was probably the last debate that may have actually mattered, and it didn't. It didn't alter the race in any in any way.
Right.
And I think before that, I'm trying to remember. I remember something with Dan Quayle. But I was young, 10 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember that being a thing.
Is that the one where he misspelled potato?
Potato. I don't think that was during the debate, though. It was.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was something with Benson's. I don't remember. Okay, yeah. Never mind. Okay, so what do we got next? What's next for us to talk about?
All right, I got a couple of things that I wanted to bring up here.
Okay, I'm coming in blind here. I don't know what you want to talk about.
We're coming in blind here. So we got. These are tangential to the debate. We already went over Walls asking Vance, did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election, and the spin they put on that. But so I have another one that's very similar to that. So Acosta had interviewed Kari Lewandowski.
Yeah,
can't say that name. And he basically puts him to the same test. He says, did Trump lose the 2020 election? Can you answer that? And Corey responds, Jim, I think it's very simple. The American people have passed the 2020 election and are focused on an election that's 5 weeks away. And Acosta comes back sharp and he says, so you're saying that Trump didn't lose the election? And the guy just doesn't even respond to it. I'm just like, how can we put this in front of people more that the elected officials in the Trump camp simply don't care about facts? They don't care whether they were on the record for X, Y, and Z, and it doesn't matter because nothing seems to stick to them.
Yeah, that interview is funny. I think Acosta ended it.
I've got a couple more, but I want to just talk about the Trump bits first.
Oh, okay, sure.
Because we can get into it. So he goes on to ask him, and he says, "Can you say, this is Acosta? Can you say that the Haitian migrants are not eating pets in Springfield?" And he says, he comes back saying, you know what I can say? 13,099 murderers were led into this country. Costa comes back and cuts him off and says, I asked you if Trump won in 2020. I just asked you if Haitian migrants are eating pets. You won't admit to it, the truth. And he goes on to say, Corey, you've been in this business a long time. I think you're a mature grown-up. It's Kamala Harris. Can you say Kamala? What's going on there? And the guy just cuts his mic and ends the interview.
It's so amazing.
I mean, for one, how do you go on Jake Tapper as a Republican? And I'm sorry, this is Acosta. I'm crossing stories here. And expect to get anything but this, because Acosta does this to Republicans.
Yeah.
He just, if you're a nonsense person, he treats you that way.
Right.
Which I appreciate, but but again, it doesn't matter. The fact that he just cut off his mic and left the interview isn't going to make a cycle. I mean, Acosta is going to get some ratings points for this, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Is anyone gonna write an article that hits the front page of any mainstream news outlet that says the Republicans refuse to acknowledge basic fact? They won't respond to questions of yes or no.
I mean, we have breaking news sort of related to that. I don't know if we're ready to get there. You want to save that for the end? Do you have?
Let's hit it. Let's hit this breaking. I love breaking news.
So there is breaking news coming out of. Let me pull this up. Breaking news. There's a bombshell. I love it when we use bombshell because it's almost never a bombshell.
Because it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything anymore. Bombshell special counsel filing includes new allegations of Trump's increasingly desperate efforts to overturn the election. Special counsel Jack Smith has outlined new details of former President Trump's and his allies' sweeping and increasingly desperate efforts to overturn his election in 2020. There are basically charges lined up here that, let me see if I can pull them up again. They're basically conspiracy to defraud the U.S., conspiracy to impede a official proceeding
hearing or whatever.
Yeah. What do you make of this? I mean, this is just breaking right now. Information is coming out. It's 60-page report.
165 is what I read.
Yeah. That has an 80-page summary. Imagine a summary that's half the size of the report. So what's your take on this?
Well, okay. So given the actual accusations that have been unsealed as part of this, it sounds like to me that this is, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the actual terminology here, but it was my recollection that Shutkin had asked them to basically narrow the scope given of the court case, given the immunity ruling from Supreme Court.
Right.
And so Jack Smith was put to test to come up with an argument, whether it's sound or not, that Trump was acting in a non-official capacity of his role in office. And so I think that that's what this unsealed filing is. I think it's that the DOJ has come back and they think that they have their case laid out that Trump was acting in a non-official capacity, and they're going to have conspiracy charges and defrauding the American people and trying to obstruct an official act and all that. It like you said, it's breaking, so it's hard for me to speculate on a 165-page document that I haven't read.
Well, here's what I love about this so far. Okay. Is that Trump's lawyers obviously they opposed Wednesday's filing. They tried to argue that a public release of these allegations would improperly influence the election and violate the Department of Justice policies. And Judge Chutkan, who has long stated the election does not play a factor in her decision making, ordered the filing to be publicly released. So ruled against Trump's lawyers and said the filing can be publicly released.
That's very surprising. Chutkan has been acting throughout the entire Trump case as a Trump surrogate. She has been bending over backwards to give them what they need to try and make it go their way, and in acting in ways that are just not judicial and not backed by hundreds of years of precedent in some cases. Everyone who listens to us should go and take a listen to the Legal Eagle, by the way. They do really great rundowns anytime anything comes out of cases like that. And they break it down for people like me who are not lawyers, but can follow along with a little hand holding. And so I'm surprised at this ruling, because there was nothing, as I understand it, there's nothing that really forced her hand, Chutkan. She didn't have to unseal the indictment findings. She certainly didn't have to do it before November 4th. And so I'm baffled, frankly. I don't know what could come of it unless there's some political motivation on the Trump camp that they want to run with the witch hunt gag again and try and make themselves out as victims.
I'm not sure that Chutkan is the judge you're thinking of. Because
really? Do I have my judges mixed up?
I think you have your judges mixed up, because I think Chutkan is the one that I think she was appointed by Obama. Trump has repeatedly called her a hack. So I know who you're thinking of, but her name escapes me. I know who you're thinking of, though.
Okay, my apologies. Yeah. I mean, he's embroiled in so many.
It's impossible to keep track.
Lawsuits and criminal defenses and what have you, that it's impossible to keep them up to date.
Yeah,
or keep them straight, rather.
I think that generally, at least legal experts, like Legal Eagle, I would imagine, have generally said Chutkan is
Cannon. I was thinking of Judge Cannon.
Yes. Hey, they both start with a C, and there's 100 different. Yeah, but legal experts have said that she's very fair and impartial. But of course, from the Trump side, if you feel like you're losing, then she's a biased, Trump-hating, radical Obama hack.
Of course, yeah.
So we're gonna see how it plays out. You know, she said that she's open to hearing from both sides about how the proceedings should continue based on the Supreme Court ruling. And I think from the special counsel side, you know, that it is very, very, it's looking very positive from their end that they were able to come back with this report outlining all of the ways that they believe the you know, what Trump did had nothing to do with official acts of the office. So I think that's very promising for their case moving forward.
I think that they're going to need to, well, it's already filed, so I shouldn't pose it in the hypothetical future. I hope that they were very careful with how they laid out those challenges to whether it was an official act or not, because SCOTUS left such a wide door there for ruling on what could and could not be construed as official acts. And as I recall, during that particular hearing, I remember, maybe I don't remember, it was Justice Sotomayor, I want to say, who asked, so is it an official act if I have SEAL Team 6 gun down my political opponent in the streets? And no one provided an answer. It was just sort of a SCOTUS shrug. And you go, well, wait a minute. We need to have some rubric or some exercise to follow to define these things. You can't just say official acts are immune almost certainly, and some non-official acts may be immune. It's hard to tell. So I'm hoping that the Justice Department and Jack Smith, just particularly his team, really did a good job of laying out the ways in which Donald Trump acted in a non-official capacity and how the alleged crimes occurred because of those actions. And I hope there's just a direct line between this was a non-official act because A, B, and C. This is the crime that occurred because of it, be it, you know, I don't even know what they're actually alleging outside of conspiracy, but but say direct line there, and therefore he cannot be immune to this in this case, and just make it as plain as day, so that if nothing else, SCOTUS, because it will get appealed no matter what, would have to rule on some actual precedent on
Yeah,
a president.
precedent. To bring up the quote from Sotomayor, because it was incredible. I remember that day. If the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him, is that within his official acts for which he can get immunity? And she asked that of Trump's lawyer, and of course, and then she put it in her dissent as well. The president orders the Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, immune.
Yeah, I mean, it was a chilling ruling, to be certain. Frankly, I kind of would have hoped that Joe would have taken up the reins here and just tried to push it a little bit. He doesn't have to go kill his political rivals, but he could do something that skirts the edge of illegality, and just really try and push this idea of, let's try and define what constitutes and does not constitute an official action. And I just would have started, like, in the wake of Chevron deference being withdrawn, like that was returned, right? Because they basically ruled that Chevron deference was ruled incorrectly in 92 or whenever that was, and they basically took the fangs out of every federal bureau or agency that can impose rules like that. I think Biden could very easily say within his official acts as a duly elected, American president, that he's going to go and enforce that, and maybe jail some people who aren't adhering to his EPA's rules, even though SCOTUS had come out and said, Chevron deference is no longer a thing. Well, fine. I'm going to use my executive authority and enforce those rules myself, as opposed to through the courts. I'm going to do that as a president's official acts, and I'm going to jail some CEOs. And I'm just going to see what happens, because at this point, it's October 2nd. I'm not the next president either way, and I can push this discussion that is frankly absurd into the public eye. Now, maybe you don't want to do that and poison, Kamala's election chances. I may wait to do that for November 5th. But I think that would have been a good legal exercise. But again, I'm hoping the DOJ does that with these filings, and the unsealing of them should prove interesting over the next day or two.
Yeah, I'm excited to kind of get in and read through the details. Again, we had just gone live or just started recording this podcast when this story broke. And it really is just a reimagining of the the charges we've already
seen.
Yeah.
So it's the refiling thing. I mean, it had to happen. I'm glad that they got it done, because you want it fresh in people's minds going into the election. What's your take, Nate, on the idea that this could be optically helpful to the Trump camp?
Optically helpful?
Yeah, and they're going to run with the idea that this is a witch hunt and they're weaponizing the DOJ. What's your take on that? Do you think that plays with people outside of Trump's base?
No, I don't think you pick up anybody new that you don't already have from screaming about witch hunts, because he's been screaming about that since he literally took office and impeachment proceedings started. You'll have the normal Elon Musk type of person, and I'm sure Elon Musk will tweet a meme about this he's probably already done it.
Probably already has.
Where it'll say something like, if they're trying to silence you, that means you're doing the right thing, right? Like
I think he literally tweeted that earlier today with no relation to that.
Yeah. I mean, so that's just the normal, this is how we optically get around this, is that, they're trying to silence us, they're trying to stop us, that must mean we're on the right path. No, sometimes it means you're fucking psychotic. and we
Yeah.
need to stop you.
Here it is. I found it.
Yeah. Okay.
Elon Musk 5 hours ago posted
Okay.
the Jim Halpert meme from The Office where he's
Yep.
got the billboard, and
Okay.
it says it's two panels. Top one, he says, "How do you tell who's telling the truth?" And then Jim puts it down and smiles, and the bottom thing says, "The ones trying to silence other people are the ones lying."
I mean, it's just so that means every single prosecutor prosecuting a defendant that is trying to get them rightfully put away for their crimes is actually wrong because they're trying to take away the freedoms of the person that was. What does that even mean? It's just gaslighting. It's nonsense. It's nonsense.
Of course it is.
So
That's Elon's claim to fame is gaslighting and failing, but that's okay.
So I will say, what do I think this does for public opinion? I personally know, I know that this is anecdotal, but I personally know Republicans who I don't think are crazy. They're people I enjoy talking to that are not voting for Trump, or at least not admitting that they're voting for Trump, specifically because of things like this, because of this trial, because of how he handled losing the election. So in the same vein that I don't think there are people that are going to be that were already voting for Trump, that they're going to not vote for him because of these new unsealed allegations. In the same way, I think the people that were already not going to vote for him are still not going to vote. I don't know who this moves. If there is really still an undecided voter out there, what the hell is it going to take? What thing does it take to move you into one of the two, check boxes?
Yeah. Well, I hate to be playing the same fiddle over and over again, but again, I think that unless it moves a news cycle, front page of media stuff, I just don't see it. I'm with you. I don't see it changing anything. It's surprising, because Richard Nixon resigned over less than this. and it was front page news of every newspaper, local or national, and it ran until he penned his resignation letter. And we can't get CNN, or we can't get anybody who is presumed to be an unbiased news opinion to run this article with the tenacity, the level of importance that it really deserves. We can't get people who are otherwise not politically minded to see this for what it is, to see these sorts of crime allegations for what they really are. And it's depressing because, like you said, this bombshell of an unsealing of indictment has historically sunk presidents or candidates in the past, and it's just not going to get played by anyone, because I suspect the response will be, well, everyone knows he's a criminal.
It's barely.
Why would I put that on my front page?
It's barely news. You're exactly. It's barely news, and that is insane. Like that is the time that we're living in. I mean, this will be gone. This will be gone tomorrow, and then when the trial starts or whatever, we'll be like, forgot all about that. I mean, it's just insane.
Well, it won't be gone tomorrow for us. You and I are going to comb through this as soon as we're done recording, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We'll come back to you guys later this week with our synopsis.
Yeah, I want
more teeth. It is interesting, and again, we don't want to speculate too much, because we do want to understand the nuance of it all. We want to make sure that we, as a podcast, are reporting it accurately. So we'll leave it at feelings for now, and how we hope it affects the campaigns moving forward, and we'll dig into it deeper with the magnifying glass later in the week.
Yeah. I'm gonna hop right in right after this call. I'm gonna read through it. I'm gonna comb through it. I'm gonna find all the juicy bits. Probably tweet about it. Follow us on at Blue Sedition on Twitter, and also on Blueski.
Blueski.
Blueski, we like to say, also on YouTube, but it's Blue Sedition Podcast there on the YouTubes. Mike, do you have anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up today?
I only have one more thing, and
Okay.
it's completely unrelated to all this stuff. It's just it's one of those things you love to see.
Okay.
So as we all know,
I love to see this.
Most hated senator, Mitch McConnell. He's retiring. They're gonna send him to be with that demon he saw in that one interview he gave.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, he's gonna go live out his remaining days there. We wish him something. He I don't know where this was. Is one of the problems, but I did see the source, and it does seem reputable. It's on Raw Story. They have somebody on record saying Mitch McConnell said, quote, "If Harris wins and kills the filibuster, it's over for Republicans," end quote.
I love it.
I love it. And I want everybody to remember that we do have this bet going. If Kamala is elected and she does away with the filibuster, I will be shaving my head and sharing that with everybody.
We're going to
help out. It's going to be a community event. We may have people come down, get autographs while they shave parts of my hair off. It'll be great.
We'll do it live on YouTube too. We gotta
stream
the video.
We'll stream the whole thing. It'll be a lot of fun. But I mean, I think that McConnell, at least in his younger years, when his brain still worked and he wasn't plagued by the demons, he was a very politically savvy fellow, and he knew what to say and what not to say and how to say what he's not saying. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was very, very good at doing what the lobby wanted him to do in a way that made it seem like he was doing what was best, quote unquote, for the American people and the Republican Party, etc. But
those are the two sides, right? So the Republicans do what's best for the American people in big quotes while they're doing what the lobbyists tell them.
Right.
The Democrats do what's best for the Democratic Party while the lobbyists tell them what to do.
Right.
So those are the two, differences there. So again, this is my cynicism talking. I do not expect that if Kamala Harris is elected president, that she will have any meaningful movement on the filibuster. I said that last time when we brought that story up initially, because she made a claim that she would do away with it for, I think, enshrining or codifying the codifying the abortion rights for pregnant people. I mean, I want to be wrong. I want her to do away with the filibuster, and I think that McConnell sort of gives away the game here. He's telling anyone listening that Republicans are only in power because they're ruling from the minority side by way of either threatening or enacting filibusters in the Senate.
They're the opposition party. They're the do-nothingers. They're the let's just hold everything up. They're really there to make sure that common sense legislation that hurts their lobbyists, puppets, doesn't get pushed through. That's really what they're there for. And
it's not only that. It's not that those things don't happen. I think the filibuster also exists to protect senators, because I think that there are a lot of senators who are in otherwise battleground states who remain in office because they don't have to take a stance on certain things.
Right.
So if you're a senator from Florida, as an example, Florida wants to enshrine abortion. I mean, by and large, you poll Floridians and they are pro-abortion as a right. But of course, Florida is less deeply red than they were in the past, but still what I would consider to be either a lean or a strong Republican base. And if a vote came to the Senate and your Florida senator had to vote no on enshrining or codifying abortion rights for pregnant people, that might sway you in the state of Florida, because that's really the only say you have in these things.
Yeah.
And we see this much more frequently at the House level. The House very often will take up a vote on something, and you will actually have yay, nay, abstains down the list. You'll get rolls, and people will campaign off that. They'll go back to their home state and they'll say, you know, he voted no on codifying Roe v. Wade. Now I'm going to campaign against him, and it's a huge bulwark for them. And so I think that the Senate largely exists to maintain the status quo and do nothing, like you say, but it's also only possible because they can insulate themselves from having to take a stance for their electorate, the people.
Yeah, I mean, you always hear it. You always hear, let's take it to a vote. Let's take it to the floor and vote on it. And there's a reason why they don't want to do it, because once you do that, you see the truth about who these people are. And yeah, I mean, no, you're absolutely right. There was one more thing I wanted to touch on, just going back to the debate before we wrap up, and that was this idea that I kind of somebody planted it in my head, so I responded with it yesterday, where JD Vance was so eloquent in his lying and so unlike Trump that there is now rumblings right in the Trump camp that Trump isn't happy about being outperformed by Vance.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
Are you telling me that they're going to go out there and their messaging is going to be Vance is more electable than Trump, and they're just going to watch him implode?
This is definitely what the left is trying to do, and I'm starting to see it a lot, and I'm starting to see stories pop up.
That'll backfire in 4 years, but now it's
probably.
pretty funny.
Right now it's pretty funny.
Right now I think I might play that card just to get a W, but
I'm hopping on that bandwagon. I'm really enjoying that.
And this is the right time to do it, because Trump's going to be doing campaigning. He's going to be out stumping. He's going to be talking in front of cameras a lot in the coming months. You can just get him to see the wrong news story before he goes on stage.
Oh yeah. I mean,
it's going to be 45 minutes of him ranting and rambling about how terrible JD Vance is.
Yeah, just like Kamala baited him with the crowd size stuff. This is just that pure bait that you know he's going to start talking about. And by the way, he looked terrible yesterday. I don't know if he's
looking terrible. Unfortunately I've been watching his stuff more than he debate and stuff. And he looks haggard. Like I said before, he's so old that this has to be just draining on him to the point of exhaustion every day.
Oh yeah.
And it's only going to get worse over the coming month.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he's taking a break.
Maybe that's why he's taking Monday off. Mental health is important to all of us, and I don't wish poorly on anybody, but if demons belonging to Mitch McConnell were to go visit somebody else for a while, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I'd be okay with that. I do wish misfortunes on some, but I won't say who.
Okay, that's fair.
All right. So I think that brings us to the end of our show today. We had a lot to cover. I thought we were going to be, mostly the VP debate, but as I think we both agreed, there's not a lot there that's going to change anything.
No. So I think the key takeaways is that it didn't move the needle. Neither candidate looked, silly or particularly great. And we'll just have to see how the campaign season continues for the next month.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll be back in a few days, because this news cycle is so ridiculous. We'll have something brand new to talk about very, very shortly. So once again, thanks everybody for listening. Do us a favor, if you're on the Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, drop us a like, a subscribe, 5-star review. If you like what we're talking about here and you want to see us keep going, or our voices to be amplified a little bit, that really helps us there. We're also on YouTube, like I said before, at Blue Sedition Podcast. We post all of our podcasts there as well, including some shorts, and we'll eventually be doing video. I think, Mike and I both do these podcasts with video right now, but we're just not set up in a way where we can record it well to start streaming on YouTube, but I think that'll be coming very, very shortly.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Stay informed, stay engaged, and remember, dissent is patriotic.
Until next time, this is the Blue Sedition Podcast, signing off.